This time on Shift Points, we cool the transmission down with this little bitty transmission cooler. Cue the new montage. Thanks to everyone that watched our videos. It is a Monday after Power Tour. We're back to the real world, kind of back to how things are normally. You guys saw all the videos. Thanks to everyone that watched those during the week. Had a pretty good turnout on those videos, and appreciate everybody that that subscribed throughout that week. Also, I'm going to work on tonight getting that together. Hopefully by the end of this video, I'll go ahead and tell you guys who that subscribed is going to get that t-shirt. So that ended last night, so I'm going to go ahead and get those gathered up this evening, or well, tonight, and then do the drawing on it. So thanks everyone that did that. Really, this is, like I said, we're kind of back to the real world. The main thing that we've got to do before we do anything to this truck, we've got a couple little things that we need to work on to get it a little better before we kind of just make it just the daily, basically. We gotta clean this shop up. Man, it looks like a bomb blew up in here. Dad is very particular about the shop and how everything is, and the more I work in here, the more that I'm like that, because it just makes it so much easier to work if everything's picked up. And you can see that post-trip, all of this stuff, all of my junk, this is Jackson's stuff he's got to come get, and then just kind of all the other stuff that has accumulated right here. This has been kind of a collect-all for any spare parts, extra parts, wiring, all that different stuff that's going on for this truck. All of that stuff's just been kind of accumulated here on this table, and so we laughed and said before we can do anything else, any sort of regular work, this has to get picked up. One thing that I realized in the videos for everything that I didn't put on was like what you get at the end of the long haul, which is this metal sign, which is Official Long Haulers. I put it on social media, but I never actually showed it in any of our videos. So yeah, this is what you officially get. It's kind of your placard to say that you are Official Long Haulers, and you went and you took your credentials, which I did show, credentials, and punched in at each of the 5 locations. If you look closely, each one of those punches are a different shape to show that you were actually there and you didn't punch in twice somewhere. But yeah, so that's the official plaque that you win, or that you get for being a long hauler. I think me and Dad talked about it. I think we're going to put it back in the back shop in the podcast studio, if you will. Have that behind that. It'd be kind of a cool little addition to have back there to go with all the other stuff there. So pretty cool little deal. So we were working on cleaning, got a call, and we'd got some new stickers made. So we got some really nice solid Shift Points and Freeman Hot Rod repair stickers done in 2 sizes. They're 8 inches and 12 inches. So we got the big ones of both sizes, or both designs, and then we've got like I showed you guys, the 8-inch ones of both designs also. So if anybody's interested in some stickers, let me know. I'd like to get some of these out there, probably sell them, at least just kind of cover the cost a little, kind of help us out just a little bit. And then also reached out to Value Print, and they're getting some new t-shirts made. So instead of this design here, it's actually going to be this design. So it'll have the YouTube logo in red and then the Shift Points in white on a black shirt. So let me know if you guys are interested in those. I'd really love to get some more of these out there, because the more of this stuff we get out there, the more views we get, the more people that get to see it, and hopefully the more people that enjoy this channel. So thank you guys if you guys decide to do that. Well, it took us the whole time yesterday that we had, but we got this cleaned up. It's the first time I've seen this area. The truck sat here for a long time, pretty much the whole time, and then pretty much as soon as we moved it over here, we put the table there and started putting stuff there. So it's the first time we've kind of seen this area of the shop in a long time. Dad's working on a couple things for Eugene, and he's gonna get those finished up. Once we get done with those, maybe be tomorrow for that too, but we're gonna start picking away on this truck a little bit, kind of knock off a couple of these little things. One thing that we did do was we ordered a transmission cooler for this thing. It's one of the True Max. It's like a 40,000 gross vehicle weight. It's a big cooler. Everything that I read online said this was the one to go for with the 4L60Es. For everybody that doesn't know, heat is what will kill an automatic transmission, basically, period. You get them hot, and it's going to really, really reduce the life of automatic transmission. And this thing was getting really hot. Like, it was staying, like, even when we were cruising, it was up over 200 degrees Fahrenheit, even just like going down the road kind of cruising. Got to bring those temperatures down. I don't exactly know like the optimum, what you would say the optimum temperature is, but that's too high. It's got to at least come down. I would say probably, what do you think, Daddy? 150, 175?
I say 200 is about the high end, about the top end. Between 150 and 200, I'd say where we want it.
Gotcha. So that's what I'm kind of thinking, somewhere in that range, and that should drastically reduce that temperature. We ordered it this morning, should be here in a couple days. We'll try and get that thing on. We're going to mount it in front of the radiator and do the plumbing on that. Great, more plumbing. But then we've got to figure out this fuel vent. We've got to figure out the fuel neck leak situation. We think we can drop the tank down. We want to drop it anyway. We think we could probably do it without dropping it, but we're going to drop it, make sure everything's good, make sure there's not something else that we're missing that I think we would be able to see way better if we had pulled the tank down. So we're going to pull that tank, make sure that's good, put some clamps on that, get that put in place, and that should resolve that issue, we hope. And then we got to figure out how to mount this fuel vent somewhere not on the outside of the standard holes out here. So this was the field repair you guys saw we did on Power Tour, just some zip ties through these holes that already existed. The plan is to put this vent in this standard is kind of what we've discussed. I don't know if we've completely finalized that, but we want that in here because anywhere below will have to is too low. So we had it as high as we could get it when we had it mounted in there, and it was just too low. It was overflowing even if it was leaking out of the fuel neck. We were definitely getting some out of that too. It was too low. So if we can move it, we can run this hose up in here, somehow route it and get it in here, get that mounted up in place inside of this. That'll let it vent. It'll let it breathe good because there is some room here. Even with the bed cover on it, it's going to breathe good, but it won't let it spew fuel out of it. So those are the big things that we've got to do on this thing, and then the brake return spring. So basically, we're going to jack the truck up. We're going to go through it. There's a couple big things we need to do. We want to go through everything, nut and bolt it, make sure everything's good. So one thing that we noticed while we were in Charlotte was how hot everything was getting. We were a little, Dad didn't really like how hot that it was running sitting there in traffic. Now that was probably like kind of a worst case scenario. It was really hot. I mean, it was way up in the 80s, 90s, sitting in traffic on asphalt. Like, it was probably as hot as it's probably going to be. But we had this going into the HP tuners here. We had this coming on at 224 and 228. So we'd go to 55% and then 95 at 224, 228. So what we've done, we've just brought this down a little. The fans will start coming on at 217 and then basically go to full power at 221. So we're going to bring that down. It's kind of a fine line because you don't want the fans to stay on all the time if you get it down too low. Looking at the log file, the truck's running around 199 to 205 is what the computer's seeing. The reason that we're seeing a little difference between the computer and the gauges, because the gauges show it right at 195, a little bit different there. First off, the gauge is really small, so the graduations are really small. And the other part of that is that where the computer is picking up the temperature and the sending unit for the temperatures are in different places. So there's going to be a little bit of difference in temperature there. So we're going to upload this file in here, see how it does, and see kind of where that's running as we go down the road. Make sure that the fans aren't staying on or anything like that. I think with this we should be well above that. Shouldn't be no problem. I told you guys before when we were working on the cooling system on this thing, we run stuff probably just a little hotter than most people, if you'd read on the internet what most people would want to do. But these engines run, if you get a Tahoe or a Silverado or whatever, they stay at 210 all the time. As far as what the gauge is concerned, they sit right at 210. Doesn't matter if it's wintertime or if it's in the middle of summer, they run and stay right at 210. And so we'd move this up just a little, but we're going to move it back down just a touch, and we think it should run right about what it would in a normal scenario. Well, we're back working on the old 55 truck. We jacked it up this morning, got it up on jack stands and started looking at it. And the plan was to drop the fuel tank, get that figured out, figure out where that leak is. I'm like 95% certain it's coming from that fuel neck. If you get up there and look, you can kind of see where it's run. I'm pretty sure that's where it's coming from. But when we started, I rolled it forward to jack it up so that we could have plenty of room back here to work when we drop the fuel tank. And when I did, noticed behind the left, or sorry, beside the front, beside the left rear tire, there was a spot of what looked like oil about this big. So we initially thought that it was a seal in the axle. So we got the truck jacked up, pulled it apart, and when we pulled it apart, what we found was there's this big wet spot on the back side of the tire. And if you look close, you can actually see where it has slung all over the edge of this tire. And what it was a brake caliper. Man, the brakes on this thing they have fought us every way, and we're actually probably pretty lucky to have got home because, right?
It's pouring right out of the center.
Yeah, right out of the center of this caliper, it was pouring brake fluid, and they said that whenever they pulled this brake pad off, it's like it broke the seal, and when that happened, it just started pouring out of it. Basically just like the open line.
This was sitting right directly over that.
Yeah, so you can see kind of how it was sealed up and it leaked out around it.
And when I took this off, this part it poured out of that just like you took the brake line completely off the caliper.
Yeah.
It just poured out of this right here.
Yeah, so we don't know what happened, and we don't know when it happened. Apparently, it had done it for a little while because, like I said, you can see the residue all over the tire. So we called up MVM this morning. Well, first off, we called Nap Store. Called Nap Store, and they didn't have. They had 3 different brands, and they didn't have them. And they said they didn't even have any made up. They didn't know when they could even get us any. So called MVM, which is where these came from initially, and I'm going to go up there and pick those up here in a few minutes. And we went ahead and got both of them. We're only going to replace this one that's leaking for now, but we're going to keep the other one as a spare just in case. Kind of a weird deal. I don't know exactly what caused it, what happened, but we found that. So that's one more thing to add to the list of things that we need to do. Speaking of that, let's go over there and look at that real quick. So we're over here looking at our list now. I went ahead and got this. I'm going to replace brake caliper. So we go ahead and put that on there. So I went ahead and started a couple of lists now. I talked to you guys. This is kind of the stuff that we need to get done on this thing to get it back where we feel like it's drivable. These are kind of, the vent windows are kind of a, vent windows and replacing this glass aren't something that's keeping us from driving it. It was just kind of, these are two kind of nice to haves. But we got to fix that brake return, we got to fix the vent, and we got to fix this fuel leak for sure. We're going to add a transcooler like I told you guys yesterday. That's ordered, should be here in a couple days. And then now this is absolutely needed, and then kind of go through everything again. I told you guys on social media that once we get this done, which this list wasn't supposed to be as big as it's ended up being, we're going to start working on the 64 Galaxy that I have. So I went ahead and kind of put together a short list on that as well. Probably going to change it over to an HEI system. It needs a full exhaust system. I'll tell you guys more about that later. Clean the interior, dump gas tank, carburetor, go through the brakes, new wheels and tires, which I already have the initial wheel. And when we talk about this in the first video with it, I'm going to go into full detail on the car itself and then what we're planning to do with it. Anyway, just a little teaser for what's coming. You know, once we get this truck kind of going, get it back going and drivable. So there's plenty of things to do, so stick with us as we keep going with these videos. Well, some good news. So I got the brake calipers back yesterday. They're a little different than the ones that were actually on the truck. Not major difference, but definitely some differences. So what we're going to do is replace both of those calipers. We're going to do that later on. Maybe in this video, don't know. Might be next week in the next video. But the big thing was the transmission cooler came this morning, which it came a day early, which is really unusual. And it's a dandy. It's humongous. So Dad's already been looking at and thinks he kind of knows how to get this thing mounted up. I did a little surface area here, just using the surface area of it. Let's see here, let's take this number, divide it by 380. So we're basically doing a 40% increase in surface area of the radiator and of this. So it's pretty drastic. And like I said, this is just specifically for the transmission itself. So what's going to happen is this side of the radiator down here, if we look down here, that line that comes into the radiator right there, we're going to break that. We're going to take it loose. I mean, that's going to have a fitting that comes out and goes into one side of this transmission cooler. Then it's going to flow through the transmission cooler. It's going to come out of this side and then go connect up to this line that we disconnected. So we're just adding one more thing into the circuit here so that we can so that we add a lot more cooling to the system. It comes with a little bypass valve. It supposedly lets everything come up to proper temperatures, and then it lets it flow through this. I don't think we're going to use that. I don't think, unless we decided in a little while we might. I don't know. But I think this thing, like I said, is humongous. We should definitely be dropping the temperature of the transmission significantly. I think that we should be able to easily get temperatures of 150 degrees, which would be it'd be about a 55 degree Fahrenheit decrease in temperature. So that will be really good. It should definitely help improve things a lot. I think what Dad has decided is it's basically going to go in something like this. So you can see it'll sit kind of midway here. That gives us good airflow through all of these, through this area in the grill and that area in the grill. And it doesn't get in the way of this bezel that sits here. So it'll probably go the other direction, meaning it'll probably go like this with the brackets that came on it mounted up here. So that's gonna, like I said, drastically improve our situation on transmission temperature. This thing wasn't cheap by any means, but it came with the bypass valve. It came with a bunch of the hose clamps and a bunch of barb fittings and everything everything I think that we're gonna need to get this thing mounted up. So like I said, wasn't cheap, but at least it looks like it's come with everything that we're gonna need. So we're going to go ahead and get started getting this thing mounted. It even came with some mounting straps, which Dad's already modifying to use for this. Okay, you guys saw the little brackets that came with it. Dad's took and bent those and kind of got them run out like this. He's working on kind of doing a little bit of adjustment to them, because the holes on the top of this right here and here are, almost lined up. So he's bending it just a little bit more so that we can get that to line up just right. So we'll have these two here. We're gonna go down here where these inserts are at the other bolts down here and do two more. They'll have to be bent in a little bit different place, because you can see the radiator the radiator straight up and down with the radiator cradle is running at the radiator cradle is straight up and down. The radiator kind of runs at a little bit of an angle. So you can see there's a gap where it's a little thicker down here versus up here. So we have to bend that at a little different place and run that over, and then run this up to where it'll bolt into into these two bottom ones, and that will have this thing super solidly mounted. I went ahead and got the fittings in on both sides of this, and what we decided was, we talked about doing like hard lines and this and that. It came with some fittings, one that will go on, that looks like it will just go onto the line that's already there. And then we've got one that goes into the radiator. So we're going to go ahead and just use the rubber line that came with the system, simplify it, not have to go run and try and find a bunch of plumbing parts and everything. So you guys don't have to deal with that anymore again. And then all we got to do is just run the line down, put the fittings on, run the line down, run the line up to this fitting right here, and then run the line down from this fitting down to the line. And that'll have this taken care of. And it'll be a huge improvement over what we had. Like I said, about 40% more cooling in total cooling, and this is just for the transmission. So that will be really good. So we're going to go ahead and get this thing mounted up and see what it looks like. So we got this thing just stuck in with 2 bolts on the brackets. That's basically where it's gonna sit. Dad's working on getting those other mounts so we can get the bottom of it supported here so it's not swinging in the wind. But man, this should work really well. You can see coming up through this grill opening here, give you a little reference with my hand, that's coming there, and then you've also got air coming in here. You're maximizing the air coming in on that thing and on the radiator. It should work super well. The only thing that will get interesting is if we do decide to put air conditioning on this truck at some point in the future, there's going to be a condenser that goes in here, so that might kind of change things a little bit, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Man, oh man, that thing it's in. So we got the brackets. We probably need to tighten these bolts up here, make sure those are tight. We got this thing in, it's mounted up, man, it is rock solid in place there. You cannot move it at all. So we got the 2 brackets up here, and then down here on the bottom, if I can get down here, show you guys. You can see the other brackets here and over here as well. So those are in, those are solidly in the radiator cradle. The brackets themselves on one side are in the radiator cradle, and then of course into the brackets of the cooler itself on the other side. I'll tell you, so far this kit is the most complete kit for something like this that I've ever seen, as far as, I mean, having the mounting plates and having the hose and all the fittings and everything. So as long as all those fittings are the right ones, this is definitely a really good kit to get. It's the true cool 40,000 pound weight rating cooler if you guys are looking for something like this to put on your dump truck. So we got the transmission cooler on, plumbed and everything. So basically how that ended up was just like you guys saw it. This hose goes down here. I'll go down here on the bottom and show you. That hose comes down right here and then runs under the radiator cradle and connects back here. So you can see that's running directly into the radiator now. And then over on this side, we have the hard line that's going under the radiator cradle again, and then right into a hard line, or into a soft line with a barb fitting right there, and then that goes into that side of the cooler. This is pulled up away from the radiator on both sides using some holes in the radiator cradle. Something that we have been dealing with on this thing just a little bit was the K&N air filter, that one over there. If you weren't careful, it would, if you touched it, it would just try and it's like it would grip off and slip off the end of that tube. And actually, what got us double thinking all this was when we were at Charlotte, Brian Silvers, who was with us at the time, we were able to be with him that day. He told us that his actually slipped off and fell down onto the headers. And that put me in a fit because we'd had that happen before, right? We'd had that slip off before, so we checked everything while we were at Charlotte and all that, and everything was good. But then today when we were working on this transmission cooler, Dad touched it, and again it just slipped right off. So he's over here, and you heard him in the background welding. He's over here adding an extension onto our tube. So right here, you can see he's added, was it like 1.5 inches, 2 inches, 1.25 inches that he's added onto the tube, and he's welding up now. So that's going to give it a lot more surface area to grip onto and hopefully keep it from slipping off and falling onto the headers like Brian's did. So thanks for that, Brian, for telling us that's a possibility, making us fix this. Alright, so we got the intercooler on. You guys saw that. Dad's working, Dad got that pipe welded on, the extension on the intake pipe. Got that welded on. It's cooling down over there now. And the last thing we're going to try and do for this video will be getting the new calipers on the back of this thing, hopefully. So we're working on that now. This one was already off. This was the one that was leaking. And we got to thinking about it. And at one point off camera, I think I was at Tri-County that day. There's some nuts that go on the back of that hold the hold where the emergency brake lever is. It holds that on. If you over tighten that too much, then those brake pads will actually load up onto the rotor a little bit and it'll get really hot. And one thing that happened was we were working on that and put that nut back on it, and when we did, we put it on too tight. And when Dad took it down the road, it got really hot, and it was this one right here on the left that had got locked up and had got really hot, which we think explains what caused the caliper to fail. We took that caliper apart yesterday and we could not find anything. Nothing looked crazy wrong with it, nothing like that. We took it apart to kind of see how it works and didn't really notice anything drastically wrong. So that kind of is the only thing that could I kind of explain it, was that it got really hot, and it cooked the seal inside of it or something that was keeping the brake fluid in. So we think that's probably what caused that, and how it didn't show up sooner, or how it didn't kind of go into a full-on failure at some point. We're just very fortunate that it didn't do it while we were driving. So but we're working on getting the old one off, getting the old bracket, emergency cable bracket off of this thing, and we've got the new caliper sitting over there, fully loaded. Has everything, the brackets, the pads, everything brand new. So we're going to kind of go back to square one on this, and when we get this done, we'll kind of be back to square one where we thought we were going to be on the truck for this week, and we've got to get the fuel leak fixed still. So let's get these on. So while Dad was working on the brakes, I went ahead and got this back in place. You can see I can really, the weakest point is honestly the mount at this point, and that's still pretty strong, but you can see there's still plenty of, this doesn't want to come off if I try and rotate it or pull it or anything, very solidly on. We honestly thought this weld was going to end up under this rubber and it would kind of give it a little traction, but it actually ended up in front of it. But what we think was happening was that this was getting back and starting into this radius, and that was what wouldn't let it clamp up, and was what was rotating it off. So when Dad added that 1.25 inches to this, it gave it a really strong straight place, and that's solidly in place. Went ahead and got the mass airflow hooked back up. I took that out while we welded this just in case, because it was going to get really hot. So I took that out, got it put back in place, plugged back in, everything's connected back up. All that should be good. I already showed you guys the transmission cooler, and then Dad's back here working on brake calipers. We did go ahead and nut and bolt this. There's 4 bolts on the bracket that goes out to hold the caliper, and then there's 4 nuts that go onto the axle flange. All of them, none of them were loose, but all of them I was able to tighten more. So I went ahead and tightened all those. Went ahead and tightened them more than they already were, and so that should be good. Didn't want anything to happen like what happened in the front that one time. So that should be good. We'll get this thing put back in place now. Also, while he works on that, come back over here to the trusty list. Go ahead and mark off trans cooler. It's good. We're going to mark off fix air filter pipe, which I added so that I could cross it off. We're working on replacing these now. Total nut and bolt, it's like, mark it there, it's like 25% done. This is all stuff that can happen later. We haven't ordered anything yet. We got to figure out if we can actually fix this one, because the vent windows for this thing, if you bought both of them, are right at $500. So we're gonna see if we can fix them before we spend that, because that's crazy. Which, to be fair, it's a complete everything, and every piece of it, glass, all the channels, all the new felt, all the locks, everything. But still, $500 for both of them is a lot of money. So we're gonna see if we can fix these, and then, like I said, once we get the brake calipers back on, so he gets them back on, we're going to go ahead and fix the fuel leak and the vent and all of that stuff. That's going to be on next week's episode, because we're running out of time to get this put together. So that'll be on next week's episode, and then that's also giving me time to figure out what all I'm going to do for the Galaxy. Turns out that Ford FE motors not the cheapest things to buy parts for, so trying to figure that out also. Then got this caliper back on. Still have to attach the emergency brake cable, but it's in, adjusted how it's supposed to be before there's fluid in it. I don't know if anyone remembers, if you go back and watch some of the videos, we didn't adjust these before we put fluid in them the first time. We were able to adjust them still, so I don't think that was the problem. It was definitely that. I'm pretty sure it was that getting hot what caused this, but we don't think that was the problem, I should say. But now this one's on. It's adjusted how it's supposed to be. Dad's working on the other side now. Taking the old caliper off and getting this side to the same place that one is. Get it adjusted where it's supposed to be. Then we can get the cables attached and get the brake lines hooked back up. And then we'll have to go through the whole bleeding process. So you guys won't be super interested in that. We'll let you know if this does make an improvement on the brakes. We think it potentially could. Because man, we've had just a fit with them, and they just fought us every way that we went. I think we're gonna call it good for this week's episode of Shift Points. Kind of a little bit of different stuff than what we expected. We didn't think we would get the transmission cooler in time to get it on, and we didn't expect to find this brake leak. So next week we're gonna get what we said we were gonna get done, which is get the fuel leak fixed, which was what we thought was the biggest problem with this thing when we got it home for Power Tour. I appreciate everyone that's been watching, everyone that's subscribed, everyone that's following us on social media. It's been growing really well, and I hope that everyone that's watching these videos is as excited about it as we are, because it's really cool to get new people in, new people seeing what we're doing, and hopefully really enjoying it. So make sure if you haven't subscribed and you're at this point in this video, click that button that pops up in the center when I get done talking here, and that will subscribe you to the channel. Then go over to Shift Points on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, and you can see our videos that we put up. I put up little shorts and stuff pretty often, try and keep you guys up to date on what we're doing as we're going down the line, and so you don't have to wait all week to get to the big videos on Fridays. So thanks everyone that's done that, and we'll see you guys next time.